So far, Jacob in chapter 31 has made a case why he was in the right and Laban was in the wrong. He even told in front of many witnesses what he had to go through, the weather conditions, well, even the terms of his work. But now Laban's turn came to defend himself. And so we read in Genesis 31, verses 43 to 47. Laban answered and said to Jacob, "These daughters are my daughters, and these children are my children, and these cattle are my cattle, and all that you see is mine. But what can I do this day unto these daughters or unto their children which they have borne? Now therefore come, let us make a covenant, I and you, and let it be for a witness between me and thee." And Jacob took a stone and set it up for a pillar. And Jacob said to his brethren, now whether it was his brethren or the people that were accompanying Laban, he said, "Gather stones," and they took stones, all of them, and made a heap. And they ate there upon the heap. And Laban called it Yegar Sahadutha. Yegar Sahadutha. But Jacob called it Galeed. You see, Laban wanted to still look good as he said, "These daughters are my daughters. These children are my children. These cattle are my cattle. And all that you see is mine. And what can I do this day unto these my daughters or unto their children, which they have borne?" You see, Laban did not deny the truth of what Jacob had said, but neither did he acknowledge any fault he had been guilty of, nor did he ask forgiveness for it. When he said, "These daughters are my daughters," he was saying, though they are your wives, they are my own flesh and blood and are very dear to me. You heard what his daughters had said. His daughter said, "He sold us to Jacob." What does that tell you about what Laban just said? He was pretending to have a strong, natural affection for them. He also claimed to profess great love for my children, as he calls them, his grandchildren. We know by now Laban was one tough character. Now, with "these cattle are my cattle," which Laban said, he was saying that Jacob would have nothing without the input of his cattle. Cattle meaning domestic livestock. Under cattle, you could mean sheep, goats, cows, whatever. Those were the cattle. But the cattle he's talking about here are the sheep. Laban, perceiving that Jacob's God was with him and blessed him and protected him, he was fearful. Lest growing powerful, he should at some time or other seek revenge on him for his abusing him. And therefore a covenant of peace was desired as a witness between each other. Again, when he said, "These cattle are my cattle," Laban was saying Jacob would have nothing without his cattle. He also said, all that you see is mine. He appeared to be bragging in such a way as to make people think he was generous in not insisting upon having it all, but giving it all back to Jacob again. And when he brought the children in, who were from 7 to 14 years of age, when he was saying, what can I do? You got kids. He was trying to convince everyone of his kind heart. Yes, he was afraid of Jacob because God was on Jacob's side. So in verses 45 and 46, we read, and Jacob took a stone and set it up for a pillar. And Jacob said to his brethren, gather stones, and they took stones and made a heap, and they ate there upon the heap. Now, what does that mean? You see, the way in which this covenant was put into effect or ratified was by a heap of stones being laid in a circular pile to serve as seats. And in the center of this circle, a large one was set up for an altar. It is also probable that a sacrifice was first offered, and then that the feast of reconciliation was partaken of by both parties, seated on the stones around it, and saying, yes, we're all in full agreement. To this day, the 21st century, archaeologists are still finding in that area heaps of stones used as memorials in abundance in the region where this transaction took place. So, to show his readiness to agree to the motion of signing a covenant between the two of them, Jacob took the first step. He took a large stone that lay upon the Mount Gilead, and set it up on one end. Set it up on end to be a standing monument or memorial of the agreement that they were about to make. So Laban, what did he call it? Yegar Sahadutha. But Jacob called it simply Galeed. In Syriac, or the Syrian language, Yegar Sahadutha means pile of testimony or heap of witness. Jacob probably named that Galeed on purpose because it sounds similar to Gilead, the mount on which this memorial of testimony stood. Galeed meant exactly the same thing as Yegar Sahadutha. Well, Gilead, as was previously mentioned, was the hill of testimony. So here it was, a pile of testimony on a hill of testimony. It sounds cool, doesn't it? Galeed on Gilead. Wow. You see, Jacob left behind a Galeed on Gilead. He left a memorial of a testimony on a testimonial mount. Jacob left that behind. And the key word there is testimony. What kind of figurative testimonial memorial will we leave behind by which we will be remembered? And that I leave as a challenge to your thoughts today.